Okay, got it. Are we on, Brian?
We are good to go.
Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us in this meeting of the Legal Desert Subcommittee of the North Carolina State Bar. I want to remind everybody there's the duty of subcommittee members to avoid conflicts of interest and performing the duties as a member of this subcommittee studying legal deserts uh, for the North Carolina State Bar. Any member of the subcommittee who is aware of any conflicts with respect to the matters before this subcommittee should disclose those at the meeting. Thank you very much. I want to start off by recognizing Brian as we begin to talk about where we go next and what we do from here.
That's right. Yeah, thank you, Alan. We were kind of talking about what's next for what's next for this committee. Seeing what we have done so far, where we've started off. We've actually covered a lot of grounds. I know it's been a while since the subcommittee has met, but we've covered a lot of grounds from starting in June of 2022, I believe, to first looking at all that different demographic data and determining that the state bar needed to have some sort of role in this question of legal deserts or legal oases, as we are needing to condition ourselves to to talk about it in that frame. But we've talked with folks from law schools. We talked with, remember, the Office of Rural Health. We've talked with folks from other states because North Carolina is not alone in this development in terms of centralizing different lawyer populations in certain communities, just having a lack of lawyers, and that impacts the legal services available, the administration of justice, and so forth. So we've covered a lot of ground, and I think we're at a point now where in talking with Cameron and I talked with Alan a week or so ago, just kind of what is the next step? We had that kind of our first wave of efforts culminate in that Legal Desert Summit last year, where we had folks from just across the state join us to talk about this issue, and along with the Chief Justice Commission on Professionalism and Jimbo Perry's incredible efforts, I feel like we all have collectively put a big spotlight on this issue and realize that there's a lot of folks that have different contributions. Maybe they're experiencing the impact in one way differently than how somebody else might experience it in a different practice area, a different part of the state. And somebody might have a solution that they are, they're I know I'm thinking of those nonprofit law firms that we heard about in the eastern part of the state. Maybe somebody wants to open one of those in another part of the state. So we've done a good job, I think, of putting the spotlight on the issue and bringing a lot of folks to the table, particularly at that summit. But now we're in a spot of, well, what's next for the subcommittee? And I think we wanted to have this discussion today to see if there were any additional issues that the subcommittee members want to explore, other perspectives, if there's any other initiatives that we want to pursue, or if we are at a point where we feel like we've educated ourselves enough on the issue, we've heard from a variety of perspectives, and maybe it's time to start putting together some recommendations for how the state bar can remain involved in this issue. Understanding, of course, I say that kind of being continually involved in this issue because this subcommittee is not going to solve the issue of legal deserts. We're not going to solve it this quarter. We're not going to solve it this year. This is going to be a long-term thing. So we wanted to have that discussion today with you all. But before we even get into that, I think it'd be important to hear from Jimbo. Jimbo is on the call, and to kind of hear the update that he has. One of the products of this subcommittee and the Chief Justice Commission on Professionalism taking this on. And like I said, we all know Jimbo has been all over the state talking with students and lawyers alike. And so there's been some development and a lot of work on Jimbo's part to create an internship where we can strive to place new law students, or maybe second-year law students in smaller communities, and hopefully kind of create that pipeline. So with that said, Jimbo, do you want to kind of provide an update on your experience and what you've seen so far?
Yeah, that'd be great. Can you hear me?
Yep, good to go.
Great. I've pulled off the road and have just it was very fun. I just finished a family funeral that I was related back 6 generations to a family that I wasn't sure I was related to, but I know I am now. So anyway, it was very fun. So thank you very much for letting me join you. Um, I would just like to, as I'm giving a bit of a report, I'd like to reflect on the first thing that Marcy said when we started this, and that was that there are lots and lots of ideas, and it's going to take lots and lots of angles on this. And because I am no longer answering to 5 judges, but just one, and that one judge has given me permission to spend a good bit of time on this, I have had the honor of meeting literally hundreds of future lawyers and just sharing with them some of the great benefits of considering lifestyle when they're considering where they want to work. And then also sharing that same message with older lawyers that are in firms and reminding them that some 67% of us have high anxiety, a full third of us have mental health or controlled substance issues. And maybe for some of them, it might be related to, a decision to live in a place that might not be best for them to live in. I've had the honor of hearing Will Graby speak a lot about a study that came out from Harvard and the recently published book, The Good Life, that talks about really the way to live a meaningful and impactful life is to have long-term relationships and to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And I personally believe, based on my life experience the last 40 years, that that investing your life in a legal oasis is a great honor and privilege. So I have no problem sharing that good news, and I love to share the good news. And I will go through this as quickly as I can. Brian, you hold your hand up when you want me to stop talking. I'll stop talking. The other thought I would like to say is we've heard, and I think maybe it's been in some of our minutes, or at least some of our letters, the Tanzanian proverb of little by little and little makes a lot. And I believe it's going to, each of us, and where I kind of hope we end up with this report in the direction of the committee is kind of the same way that y'all have done when you talk about succession planning or anything else, recognizing this needs to be a topic that we need to talk about with our fellow lawyers on a regular basis and remind them. And then when we do that, I think over time, little by little, we will begin to make progress. When we did the summit, we started out first. We kind of compared it to the idea of we need to stop the bleeding first, and then we can move in a direction of long-term solution. You might remember one of the ideas that was shared for stopping the bleeding was the 10 client challenge. And that has worked well, at least in one district. I got an email that District 1, where they're having very, very serious problems in District 1, they want to consider doing that. And we're going to be having a meeting up there with Mary Pollard and Marshall Ellis in the near future to talk about maybe trying to expand that idea. The other thing we talked about in terms of shorter term solutions was to try to identify folks that were getting ready to graduate or take the bar and try to encourage them to consider living in smaller communities. And we've continued to do that with having panels. And I would just give a big shout out to each of the people that have been involved in panels as we've made it around to all the law schools. And there really has been some great progress. A long ways needs to be made, but just as an example, over at Campbell, I think as a result of some of our conversations, they actually now have a listserv with about 70 people on the listserv and those 70 people are interested in small town practices. The other side of it that honestly, and this is an area I think that maybe the bar counselors and others can really help with, is that we're not doing a very good job as small town lawyers or underserved areas of getting the word out of what our need is. And that's because we are in survival mode. And when you're going to 5 courtrooms and you haven't set aside money for an internship or anything else, we just are trying to survive. And I've maybe said this before, but as one lawyer told me, my succession plan and my plan is I'm not going to continue my firm. Somebody's going to walk into my office. I'm going to be slumped over on my desk on a Sunday morning, and that's my plan. And of course, there are hundreds of students that could really fill in those spots, but we as attorneys have got to be willing to take the time to think about the next generation. I'll give you one really short example. I was talking with a student the other day. He wants to settle in Western North Carolina, but he has not really heard about jobs out there. And the reason for that, we know it well, from day one of school, big firms are recruiting. And then once they get them there, they're taking them to the Carolina Country Club and every other place to say how great it is. And we as a small firm say, I want a 3L who wants to live here. And we're not selling our community. So we've really got to work on our marketing and branding. I was talking with a young man last night who has taken a 2L position. I was trying to get him for the Legal Oasis, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, but Legal Oasis internship. But he had already committed to a full summer with a Charlotte firm, but he really wants to be in either Franklin or Hendersonville. And I have actually found somebody in Hendersonville that's anxious to have an attorney, but he didn't know there was anybody there looking for anybody. So now he's already committed to his 2L year, being in Charlotte, and he's going to sure as heck get a job offer after his 2L year. And the odds go way down that we're going to get him up in Franklin or Hendersonville. And I think it's because we weren't farsighted enough to recognize that we've got to sell our communities. Let me also, with regards to, immediately addressing issues in law school, Mark Atkinson, who you might remember, is the attorney who has done the legal incubator. It didn't cost us $500,000, and it doesn't cost us the new attorneys $400 a month or whatever the number was. He's raised his rates to $50 a month, and he has got a cohort again this year of about I think it's 8 this year, but he's doing about 8 a year, and we're trying to expand it. But he is also now teaching a course at Central about starting law practices and how he can help with that, and that would be both a for-profit and nonprofit firm. And so we're hoping that maybe other law schools will consider adding that course. Marcy's and Todd's suggestion of the Legal Oasis internship, I'm finding is it's this year our goal is to have a project, a pilot project that will identify, we hope, 4 students who will go to small towns and receive a stipend that Marcy and Todd funded. The first job offer was actually made yesterday from a firm. Then there's another firm I'm hoping that's going to make an offer within a week. And I've got about probably 20 applications, but I've only a few of them really fit. And what we're doing is we're trying to match them up with firms that they would do at least 50% of their work, IDS work, because the money's coming through a nonprofit, and we need to make sure it's going for underserved, not only an underserved area, but an underserved type of work that they'd be doing. But it really is a lot of fun talking to students and sharing this idea. And over time, I believe it can have an impact. And if we have success with that, then I believe that through Todd and Marcy's leadership, and their past leadership, that we'll be able to raise some more money from some firms around the state. I'm really hopeful for that. We've also been talking about longer term recruitment, and the longer term recruitment, we're still working with Todd Edwards. You might remember him from the meeting with the NC Alliance, And the way we're going to try to tie in with them, getting the legal pods or the legal sections within even high schools, is we're going to do it through coordinating with the moot court competition and trying to give them, the high school students, a project to work on and match them up. And hopefully that will then encourage them to consider being lawyers. I've got a lot of notes, a lot of things I could say, but I'll just kind of stop it here and just say, I would encourage each of the people on the panel, and then when you go back to your local communities, if you want me to come, I'd love to come and share with your local community or bar meetings. But if each of y'all would consider long-term community recruitment, and what that means is, and I'll give you an example. There was a lawyer that I talked to the other day. He has been contacted by a sophomore in high school who wants to be a lawyer. And that lawyer is already recruiting him for 9 years from now. And he has told him that he'll have a spot for him. And they spent a winter break day the other day in court. And it was just a great, great experience. It doesn't have to be that long term, but I would suggest that we each, especially in smaller communities, we should be identifying who are the students that are coming from our high schools or in college that have an interest in the law, and we need to begin recruiting them now. We need to say, oh, you want to be a lawyer? We need to put them in our reminders on our telephones. We need to send them little notes during exams. We need to tell them they can come when they're on break, and we need to let them know that they are wanted and needed. And I'm just going to give one example of somebody that I think has done it great. And it is one of your bar counselors, Tom Langdon, who's a district court judge up in Surrey and Stokes County. I have sent him, I think, about 10 people that I have met that are interested in going to Surrey and Stokes County. He immediately responds to them and sets up a lunch meeting with them. And he was reflecting the other day on one of the meetings he's had about 2 weeks ago. He took them to the local diner. Of course, he knew everybody that went in and out of the local diner. And it was a pretty overwhelming experience for the potential future new lawyer, seeing that. And Tom is planting great seeds, but it has taken time and effort from him where he has said, I'm going to make this a priority in terms of long-term recruitment. And in my opinion, some years from now, we're going to see some great results from Tom. There are a number of other people that are doing what Tom is doing. Boyd Sturgis is doing it. I've actually recently I sent somebody to Matt Smith, and Matt immediately was on them. And I'm really hoping that person is going to be a fit for him one day. But I would just ask you, when I call you up, would you please take time to contact that student when I have located somebody that would be potentially interested in your area, and then you take it over and let them know that student would be needed. And a bad example of it is the other day I was trying to get someone placed for a Legal Oasis internship, and the firm, of course, thought that they didn't understand what it was and didn't have time because of the busyness of the days to see that through, again, Marcy and Ty's generosity, we were going to be able to pay for that internship. All they had time to do was to have their secretary call me up and say, we're not interested. I guess they thought I really wanted to go up there and audit their books or something. I don't know what they thought, but they were not, they did not have time to respond. And I understand that as a 40-year small town practitioner, but that's where we need to come in, and we need to help educate our local bars that we need to do, again, the community long-term recruitment. Thank you for giving me this time, Brian. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank
Any
you,
questions that I can try to respond to?
I have a question, Jimbo. The cohorts, how many of those are going to rural areas? Mark's cohorts, do you know what the percentage?
Are you talking about through the incubator, Marcy?
Yes. He said he said several cohorts. I think that's groups.
Okay, the incubator cohorts.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
What Mark is doing is he basically his mission is to place underserved areas with underserved people. However, one of the things that's really true, Marcy, is there are areas, even like Raleigh, where there are underserved areas of the law. And so, for example, let me give you this as an example. We're working with a firm in Raleigh, and we are talking to them about starting a nonprofit firm in which they would be board members to be able to service that almost 80% of folks that cannot get services for civil, in the civil type cases. And even in some of the communities that even have public defenders, there are not enough lawyers doing conflict cases. And so Mark is open to helping folks anywhere, but he's focusing on underserved areas of the law. If you were to ask me how many of them are actually from in underserved areas, it's over 50%. We placed somebody the other day that's committed to going to Hyde County, where there's 0 lawyers and 5,000 people, and they are actually, and Mark is coaching them. So I would say I don't have exact numbers on that. I'll be able to give that to you, after this year, after we kind of see how the numbers kind of work out. But we are working, and it's almost like we need to increase the definition of a legal desert. A legal desert population-wise is one thing, but a legal desert service-wise is a totally different thing. I will tell you though, Marcy, that all of our legal oasis interns are all going to be in underserved areas doing underserved law. None of them are going to be, like in Raleigh. And the other, may I also add this briefly? I didn't say this before. With regards to the momentum that kind of got going, I think, Marcy, from the initiative and I won't say it's all because of the summit, and I'm sure this has been on the people have talked about this before, but this year the public defenders are funding about 50 interns. The district attorneys are funding about 50 interns. And IALTA is giving $50,000 to every law school to do interns for underserved areas. All of those are public service. None of those are firms. And so the only one that's really doing firms is really the Legal Oasis internship. May also real briefly just say that this idea of the nonprofit is getting a lot of traction with students and with firms. And I think if we look at this 10 years from now, we're going to see a really good foothold of a lot of small nonprofit firms around the state. The one in Little Washington, Interbanks, has just hired another lawyer, and they're trying to hire one more. And so and she is getting ready to do a TED talk on that. Is not by TED, but we're going to make it like a TED talk, and we're going to publish it. And I think we're going to send it to all the schools, and I think it's going to really help also encourage.
One more question for Jimbo while we have him. Do you have any specific thoughts or ideas about how we can help, because I think we have to decide as the State Bar Subcommittee or through our Access to Justice how we can help going forward.
Yes.
Have you given any thought to that? And okay.
Yeah, I think as Mel Wright used to say, we need to continue beating the drum of legal oases or legal deserts. And every time we have an opportunity at a meeting, we need to talk about it. I think when our bar counselors go back to their local districts and they give reports, I think they should give reports on thinking about how you do community recruitment and long-term recruitment. And I'll just say that I am available to go to these meetings and try to help promote it. But I think it just needs to stay on the forefront of our conversations and talking, and that there are workable solutions. But the key is going to be each of us individually being willing to do our own little part and to be able to say, oh, I would consider I'll make it as just simple as this, Marcy. I mean, you gave a great example a year ago. There was somebody that wanted to have an internship in Johnson County, and and they weren't going to get paid, so you gave them a place to live for the summer. I mean, that's a huge deal when somebody's renting a place in Raleigh or Chapel Hill and they would have to pay $1,000 a month and they're not getting paid and they're having to cover their rent. If we as attorneys say, I'm in this for community recruitment, then that's the way we're going to make a difference. And that's really, I think that involves both education, but also I think it involves identifying the people who really have a heart for this, who understand it and want to be a part of the solution, which is not going to be for everybody. I understand that, but I think there are going to be key players in all communities who are interested.
Okay, thank you so much, Jimbo, for that report and for that recommendation, because what we really need to determine as a subcommittee is where we go from here.
Right.
What kind of a role we can play in trying to, as Jimbo said, keep beating the drums of this issue. The facilitation role that we can play. We can, as a state bar, be in a direct funding role, obviously, that kind of thing, but we can educate, we can beat the drums, we can facilitate. And so that I wanted us to kind of discuss that for the rest of our time together, what we see this committee's role as, what it should be going forward, whether it should go forward, whether we should continue to, study some things and make other recommendations, or what. I'll just kind of open it up to everybody. What are your thoughts in that regard? Does anybody have any thoughts?
I don't want to keep talking. Other people need to talk too, but
Thank you, Marcy.
I'm excited about what we could do to partner with the mock trial program. So we have Becky's coming to speak, I believe, and somebody else from the program to the Access to Justice Committee in April. So how we state bar counselors can help facilitate and have more of the mock trial programs in the middle schools and the high schools. Because I remember early on in this subcommittee, we had one speaker that said that the best way to get lawyers in these areas is to get the people that live there and grew up there, and they're more likely to go back and maybe to try to instill in them an interest in the law early on in their lives and their young lives, back to even as early as middle school. And so that is, I'm just kind of interested to see if there's something we can do to help with that program. And then also, I think that almost all of our areas probably have career days. I know that countless times I've been to the middle schools and the high schools and even our community college when they've had career days. And if I couldn't go, I sent somebody from our firm to talk about being a lawyer. So that's another way I think that maybe our counselors can get involved in trying to figure out what type of career days or programs are available in their communities and encourage not just counselors, but other lawyers to participate in those. It's sad to me to have career days and not have anybody from the legal community participate. And I bet you there are a lot of those. So these are just thoughts. I don't know. These are just ideas, thoughts. Obviously, being available to shadow, again, encouraging counselors to, I've shadowed a lot. I've had a lot of high school students, middle school students, even college students who thought they may want to go to law school to shadow. So just some of the thoughts, but I think we do need to be involved somehow. I don't think we should just peace out.
Right. Very good points, Marcy. Do you see this committee as continuing to go forward to be an educational piece to the remaining council and the counselors about these things?
I guess that's possible.
Yeah.
I don't have any concrete ideas. It's just that I think it would be a real shame for the state bar, especially with all the work that Jimbo is doing. And if we can assist him and continue to assist him in whatever way that we can, I think that we should do that. And I think is clearly in our lane. What it looks like, I guess we're trying to figure that out.
Right.
But I would hate to say, we're done.
Right.
See you, good luck.
I think we need to work towards at least a good report and maybe even journal article to lawyers out there about the programs available, especially about things that are maybe forming. And does anybody else have any thoughts about that?
I wanted to follow up on what Jimbo said. I mean, I'm in Little Washington. He talked about the Interbanks Legal, the nonprofit here, Hyde County. Um, there's not a regular attorney down there. There is a prosecutor that lives down there, but that's the only attorney I think that lives in Hyde County. And to follow and to buttress that with what Marcy was saying, I don't know if there would ever come a time where this momentum that Jimbo has and the inertia created by his energy would be self-sustaining. Okay. So I think there's always going to be a need for us to continue this process. Now it may change as it goes forward, but I think kind of like these things we've done with the law school, the programs with the law schools, where prosecutors have gone in and talked about it. And I think if we continue those and work with them, certainly anything that the expansion of the opportunities through the public defender's offices and the district attorney's conference, those things are all going to be positive, but there's still a need. I mean, we have a public defender's office here that has had a position open almost a year. So, I mean, you have that reality that there still exists these places in Oasis or a person that has not found this Oasis as the place to come and work. If I'm trying to parry Jimbo's enthusiasm there. So I think it is something that we need to continue. But then that kind of begs the question, then what do we do? What hard and fast things are we able to do going forward other than just, and it may be a place for them to come at the bar facilities. It may be a place where we participate with those ongoing recruitment. I like the ideas of the mock trials. My daughter's a teacher. She does a mock trial within one of her classes for her classes as a 6th grade class. I'm participating in that. But it's really a creative writing perspective, not a mock trial perspective. So I think that's something that could be developed within the schools, even in these rural areas. So I'd like to get some information on that. I've got assistant DAs that work with me that are involved in that already. So it may just be plugging them in. But again, I'm going to develop that from where I sit in this office to get it into the schools within the district to hopefully develop some interest in somebody becoming a lawyer. So I think it's still, we need to perpetuate it, but we also need to sustain it in the way we can. And that's hard to figure out what that looks like where I'm sitting, Alan. I think the things we've done so far are good. I think we need to continue doing the things we've done. And if something comes available, the incubator, I think is a great project, but that's an underserved areas of law as opposed to underserved areas of population, which is really a Oasis thing, as opposed to just the need for that area of the law. But I still think there's crossover there. I still think there's still a need there from that perspective. So those are my thoughts.
I do too. Do we want to hear? I know I need to know more about the mock trial programs that are out there and how we could maybe be involved in encouraging our lawyers in our areas to get involved in that and so forth. I know recently in my area, they had a mock trial event in Hickory, and they were recruiting lawyers and so forth. And I just need to know more about the people who are involved in all that and see how I can be a better assistance to them and help my other lawyers be better assistants to them.
Hey, Alan, I've got a couple of thoughts. One, thank the subcommittee for its excellent work. You guys have done great work, and I commend you on that. In terms of where you go, I think it's a given that the issue of legal deserts or legal oases or whatever we call them will be around for a long time. Where it's going to be, as I say, a journey and not a sprint. And I think we're going to continue to try to find ways to make it viable, to make it more successful. One of the things that I think this subcommittee ought to consider, it's a subcommittee, and our subcommittees at the State Bar do not go on forever, as you all know. But I think the report that I anticipate you all issuing ought to address and make some suggestions and recommendations about how the topics and theories and issues and good work of this subcommittee can become part and parcel of the mission of the standing committee, which is now the Access to Justice Committee. I think the Access to Justice Committee will be addressing lots of issues, but it should always, in my view, have a place for this particular issue, because it is one that we're going to need to address for many, many decades to come, probably. We're going to have to keep chipping away at it. But I think that report needs to make some concrete recommendations about how that issue remains alive under the Access to Justice umbrella. So that's one of the things I think you need to give some serious thought to, and I know you will. On the mock trial program, I think it's doing wonderful things. I assume a lot of you knew that they had a program in our courtroom at the state bar a couple of weeks ago, and came and sort of explained what they do and what they have in mind, and all the good work that they're doing. And as an outgrowth of that, between Marcy and Chief Justice, who is fully invested in that program, Rebecca, what's her last name, Marcy? Rebecca Albritton?
Britton.
Yeah, Rebecca's coming to talk to us, to the counselors at our April meeting, to explain exactly what the mock trial program is about, and how we can get involved, and how we can continue to spread the good work that they do around the state. And so one of the things we ought to try to do is to make sure that the members of this subcommittee are there to participate in that and to learn more about it. And I'm sure she will be happy to talk with anyone. And I think we need to look for ways to get the counselors more involved, who can then go back to their respective judicial districts and talk about that issue, but also talk about how that work dovetails with potentially with the legal deserts, legal oasis work that we're talking about as well. So, I mean, I think a lot of us are getting more and more involved in that. Rebecca is phenomenal, quite frankly, and is doing great work. And so she's talked Marcy and I into participating a week or so from now in the final mock trial regional oral arguments that they will do here. The Chief Justice is going to be judging that. So as I said, he is all in, and he will be very supportive of what we could do and partnering with us at the state bar to make the mock trial program a success, but also how we can work that in with the legal desert issues that we have, and vice versa. So it's a partnership arrangement. Potentially, we can talk to the judicial district bar presidents about mock trials and legal deserts, and how we can incorporate those into the various judicial districts around the state. So I think it's just a matter of keeping this issue top of mind and figuring out how we at the state bar can remain involved and make sure that this issue is one that the Access to Justice Committee continues every year to keep moving forward as best as we can. So those are just my general thoughts on
it. Thank you, Todd. I agree wholeheartedly. If we can figure out a concrete way to have some type of permanent liaison between the Access to Justice and the efforts of Jimbo and so many others about these legal deserts or legal oasis, the ideas that are out there, and continue to communicate about it, right? Keep it at the forefront, as Jimbo suggested. Does anybody else got any ideas about how that concrete piece would look? I can tell you that I would like to see us give a more concrete report to the Access to Justice Committee, and then on to the council in April, hopefully showing how we're moving towards a more concrete proposal of how we can facilitate, keeping these issues at the forefront going forward. Anybody else have any ideas about how that concrete piece would look?
One way, I mean, obviously the legal Oasis Fellowship this year is sort of a pilot program, but look into ways that we can make sure that that pilot program is demonstrated to be one that is viable and can be successful. And therefore, that is another reason for us to try to make sure that we continue to support it and try to expand it throughout the state, the judicial districts, and to work closely with Jimbo and the commission on how we incorporate those issues as we move forward, how we broaden them, how we expand it to, folks who are already practicing, wanting to move into one of these places to partner or to buy or whatever, to start practicing in one of those OECs, so to speak, as we move forward. I think there's a lot of different issues, a lot of stakeholders out there, a lot of possibilities. We can make this a success, but it's going to take some work. And so we just got to stay at it.
I have one thought.
Yes, Judge.
The public defender is moving or expanding all over the state, and each year they have a few more districts that join it, and eventually you'll have a public defender system in the entire state. And the areas they're expanding in are these legal desert areas, and it gives a lot of young people the opportunity to get some experience, and if they know about it. And as they get out of law school, I think they ought to be encouraged to take a look at it, because when you get out of law school, you don't know anything about how to practice law. And in these legal deserts, it's even harder, because they don't have mentors and other people that help them. And I think that we ought to be looking toward encouraging people in these law schools that are coming out to take a look at these expanded public defender areas, because it's great experience. And once they find out what some of these rural areas are and how it can be I practiced in a small town my entire career before I became a judge, and I had a very good practice. And I think younger people who are getting out of law schools don't understand and don't realize what a good life they can have in some of these rural areas that are underserved with legal services. And that would be one way to try to encourage people to look at these areas.
That's a great idea, Judge Doughton. I agree. Absolutely. Yes, April.
Oh, Judge Down, I think that's fantastic. I can only speak for Campbell, but we were very pleased to get a $50,000 grant, just like Jimbo mentioned, from IOLTA. So we're pushing out really hard to our students, the 1Ls and 2Ls, this amazing opportunity, to get a funded, summer experience. And we just got some communication from Indigent Defense Services of the new offices that are opening, where they're also, they want to get specific information out about these communities to law students, so they have a little bit more of a picture of where would they be going if they went to district, name the number. But I do agree with Jimbo about this idea of doing as much as we can. And I think Jimbo's done such a great job when he's come here to the law school, and we've had these small town panels with practitioners from all over the state coming, and they're really painting a picture of not just the practice of law in, say, this community, but what it's like to be a member of this community and be part of the fabric of the community. And I think that that's what is starting to draw more students to even be thinking about that. I think from Raleigh, the reality is that they spend 3 years in Raleigh, and then we're trying to, I don't want to say convince, but that sounds negative. We're trying to, just open their eyes to the idea of going to, Pasquotank. I think that they're 23-year-old young people who, you know, if they're not married and maybe they don't have other types of more adult responsibilities, that probably sounds pretty foreign to them, unless they get more of a picture of what it could be like to create a real life there, besides just the day-to-day work of doing good work and serving their communities. So, but we're really excited from the law school standpoint of doing whatever we can here and through, you know, this, you know, community and these conversations, but anything we can do to help to push this idea along, you know, we're, you know, 1000% in.
Thank you, April. And one of the most rewarding parts of this subcommittee has been to see how much you and other law school representatives have really stepped up to educate your students more about, you know, our smaller communities. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate that hard work on that end. Anybody else got any comments or statements? Yes, Marcy.
I'd like to say one other thing about,
Yes, Judge.
I've held court. One of the few judges has held court in all 100 counties.
Oh.
And North Carolina, the courts have more things in common, and the people have more things in common than they do really have differences in the legal community. And it's we've got a beautiful state, and these rural areas, I just don't think people are encouraged enough to take a look at them, because you can have a wonderful life practicing in the smaller area. And some of the best lawyers I've ever met and ever seen try a case were from rural areas. I do a moot court competition at Elon. I have for several years. And I think this new law school in High Point, we ought to have some presence there. But I think if the law schools could just have some kind of program to let people come and see some of the, you talk about Hyde County. I spent 2 weeks trying a coastal resources commission there, which I knew nothing about when I started, and don't know very much about it now. But I mean, that was an interesting experience where you got to wait on the ferry from Ocracoke, and you've also got to get the people out in time to get back. But it's this state. The lawyers are not that different, and from one area of and they're not that different in what they want, the kind of life they want. And but you can have if the law schools and other people could educate people about the type of life they can have in these smaller towns. You may not know it, but lawyers are still respected in these small towns. They may not have the respect in the larger towns to do it, but they are generally the leading citizens of these smaller communities, and they're still seen as that way. And it's I don't know what else to say about it, but I think we ought to encourage them, and the law schools ought to encourage them just to take a look at the type of life they can have. And I do think that public defender program being expanded the way it is every year is a way to get a lot of people to take a look at working there and seeing what they like. But, you know, you don't get any experience anymore. It's hard to get experience trying a case like it was when I started 50 some years ago. I mean, we tried these little old cases, and you might go to, if you went to court, you could expect that there were going to be trials all week. Now it's a lot of times you don't have it. I was in Greensboro court this week in civil court, and the court broke down. We didn't have any trials, but that wasn't the way it was 55 years ago. I mean, you tried cases every week, and but it. I think it's whatever we can do to try and encourage people to take a look at these rural areas. They'd be happier than they think they could be.
I agree. Marcy, I think you had a comment.
I did, but before I said that, Judge, that is exactly what these panels are doing that Jimbo has set up across the state. I was fortunate enough to participate in the one at Wake Forest, and we had, you know, I'm a family lawyer from Johnston County, and then we had somebody at the DA's office there, and some from different types of lawyers, all from smaller communities. And present, and spoke with the law students about and try to encourage them and tell them all the wonderful reasons why they should go to rural areas. So that is being done. It can be done, more and more. I mean, it's not something you do one time and not do it again. And that's kind of my thought. Alan, you were asking about maybe some specifics to put in the report, things that could be done now. I think that I agree with Todd, and I think that it's standing, access to justice is a standing committee, and this is probably at the top of the issues that we're facing right now that should be studied by that standing committee. And as I'm hearing people talk today, it seems like the concrete things that we right now need to continue to look at and help would be how to expand the internship program and what we can do to help do that. So that's number one. And then also how can we participate in the North Carolina mock trial program? And again, I keep going back to one of our original speakers, and I was paying attention, that said, we've got to get into these kids early that live in the communities because they're more likely to go back home than somebody that's grown up in a larger city. So I think that we need to figure out what we can do to help with that program. And then it seems like the third area that I'm hearing us talk about today are really how we can, we'll call it a speakers bureau, but how we can help to get lawyers, counselors should be the examples that we do it ourselves, but I encourage other lawyers to be available to serve on these panels that Jimbo has, to be able to go into these career days in the communities, to help with the mock trial program. So I think that's the third area, is really just how to get lawyers engaged, starting with the counselors in their local communities, but also then hopefully getting other lawyers to be engaged as well, and to be engaged with young people. I love hanging out with young people. I mean, they are so excited when they come and, shadow me and we go into a courtroom or something. They're just, 1,000 questions. They ask 1,000 questions. Dion knows that. I mean, she's had folks shadow her. I know we all have. So those are the kind of the three areas that I'm thinking of right now. And there may be others. And then I think over time, there'll be others. There'll be other ways. But if you're thinking of something right now, concrete, that we can do, those are just some thoughts.
Marcy, I think those are great concrete ideas, those three areas that you just talked about, and I just wrote them down. Does anybody else have any thoughts about that? I think that's three concrete areas that we can say we can continue to observe how we can be a part of facilitating those programs and educating lawyers about those programs and being involved. I really like that idea. We hit the young people locally in the smaller areas. We hit the law schools with panels. We hit career days, and we continue to help expand the internship program. Does anybody else have any thoughts about those? I think I see us moving towards, Brian, hopefully a type of report we can try to get together.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, Alan. I guess to be clear, I'm not hearing that there's any particular topic that anybody else wants to study, a different angle. And so with that said, I was kind of jotting down some ideas myself, Marcy, and I had similar ones to what you had. It seems like they're all kind of related. It's kind of, we could write a report that talks about what we have learned, what we've seen, the impact that it has, and how what we've learned really shapes our recommendations. One of which is just to keep this at the forefront. Like I'm wondering, we're talking about the Access to Justice Committee, and that's where this subcommittee reports to. This is going to be a long-term thing, but it might start to dilute the message, that we can continually send to the counselors through the Access to Justice Committee if we're always, kind of having a full Access to Justice Committee meeting on legal deserts. But maybe if we dedicate at least one meeting each year to an update on legal deserts, that we can invite law school representatives to that meeting in particular to say, tell us about your students right now. We can bring some folks in from smaller communities. Have you all engaged in any sort of community recruiting, the way that Jimbo was talking, or maybe having somebody who had an experience with one of these Legal Oases interns, bring that firm in to talk about that, but just to make some effort, whatever it looks like, to keep legal deserts and legal oases at the forefront of the state bar's mind, and particularly the counselors, because I think one of the things that we realized was that the state bar, the state bar offers an opportunity for a spotlight, as we regulate the profession for the benefit of the public, that we can highlight issues, and the best mechanism to spread that, of course, can be, yes, we have our live streamed meetings. I don't know how many people are watching those, but at the very least, we're putting the message out there. We can do stuff through the journal, but really the biggest thing, I think, is informing our counselors, our council that's comprised of elected representatives from the different legal communities from across the state, to bring what they learn at the council meetings back to the communities and continue to share ideas. And so I'm hearing, I've got some ideas in my head, and maybe I know we're about to hit 1 hour, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But Alan, I think we can maybe talk about that and try to generate something. I don't know if we're in a final report yet, because I think it'd be good to have a final report that the committee can look at and see what we're missing. So we might not have a final report for April, so to speak, but we can, I feel like we're moving that direction. I've heard a lot of ideas and kind of these different things that we would want to encourage, whether it's planting seeds in the community with students through the mock trial program, reaching out law schools, encouraging law schools to, continue this effort of having legal oases at the forefront of conversations with career services or what have you. Just, that's an encouragement that the state bar can make. We're not going to mandate it. We can't mandate it to law schools, but we can certainly encourage it the way that I think we have done and that Jimbo has done. So there's a variety of different things that I think we can articulate, and then we can take some of these steps. Like, what's within our wheelhouse is we as an agency that has an impact in some way on all the lawyers across the state can continue to make this a highlighted topic that folks will still be aware of, and we can educate folks on. We can encourage that buy-in from lawyers, whether they're looking for a potential change in career or whether they are in a smaller community looking to reach out and try to create this community recruiting effort for the next generation of lawyers that will serve that community. So there's a number of thoughts in my head. That's a long-winded way of saying I got thoughts in my head. Alan, I'd like to speak with you and we can start kind of putting some of this stuff in order and certainly get back to the committee. And in the meantime, committee members, I would certainly encourage you. I think, Alan, I presume you would probably encourage us as well. But if you get off of this call and you have an idea that you think we should really highlight this, please feel free to email me, email Alan, email Cameron, email all of us. We'll just make sure that we can address everything, because these are the sorts of things that will continue to kind of percolate as we walk away back into our everyday lives.
Right. Anybody else have any comments? I think that if it's okay with the subcommittee, Brian and I will work together on the beginnings of a proposed kind of report. And in April, we'll report that we're getting there with some specific recommendations. I really like the idea about at least going forward having one council meeting a year that's really dedicated to revisiting legal oases and getting other people at that meeting and seeing what everything is done. I also want to point out that in the panels at the law schools will be a special emphasis on getting as Judge Doughton said, getting the word out about the availability with the expanded public defender's offices and so forth. Because I know that I learned how to practice law in criminal courts first as a court-appointed attorney, and I'm very appreciative of that opportunity I had. I got appointed within 2 weeks to a potential life sentence case. That's the way it used to work under fair sentencing, right, Judge Doughton?
Sure.
It was a habitual felon case, and of course, life didn't mean life back then, but nonetheless, it scared the daylights out of this 2-week lawyer, but it also made me get down and get to work and learn what to do and ask a lot of questions of older lawyers and so forth. All right. Any other comments at this time or any other thoughts before we adjourn? I thank everybody's attendance. Thank you so much. We'll probably be wanting to have a meeting, soon after the April meeting. The council meeting, I would assume. Is that your thoughts, Brian?
Yes, sir.
And then hopefully really work more towards, as we were challenged to do by President Todd, some real concrete proposals as we can help this problem statewide. Any other thoughts before we adjourn?
I just want to thank all of you for showing an interest in this. This is something that's dear to my heart, and I really, I'm very interested in it, and I thank all of you for your hard work on it. And I think it's something very important to for the state bar to be doing. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Judge. Do I have a motion that we adjourn at this time? I'll move that we adjourn. Is any
So moved. Second.
second? Okay. Okay, I think that's acclamation to adjourn. Thank you all. Once again, as Brian encouraged you, please, you have thoughts after this meeting. Please email myself or Brian with those thoughts, okay? About what kind of things we should be looking at. And congratulations, Judge Merrill, again. All right. That's great.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks, Alan, Brian.
Thank you, Marcy.
Cameron,
Thank you,
everybody.
Todd.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.